Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Canada's Building Trades Union is calling the move to bring foreign workers to Windsor's EV battery plant insulting. We have reaction from the group tonight. Plus, the Windsor Police Services are receiving nearly $900,000 to fight auto theft. It's in response to the increase of vehicle robberies. And two Windsorites are starring in a new holiday musical in Toronto. They share the story of Christmases tonight. We're learning more about the hundreds of South Korean workers who will be coming to Windsor to set up the electric vehicle battery plant. The province said today the foreign employees will help train Ontario workers with the skills for this type of labor in the future. Still, not everyone is happy about it. The CBC's Dawson Chen has been following this issue. Dawson, how are people reacting to the news today?
Meg, Canada's trades unions are not pleased by it. Nexstar says these 900 South Korean workers are OEM technicians. That's original equipment manufacturer techs. They're not Nexstar employees. They're temporary staff brought in for this phase only. But I spoke to the executive director of Canada's Building Trades Unions, and he said these jobs should be going to Canadians.
Our workers in Windsor are workers right across the country, have performed state-of-the-art technology in the automotive industry for over 100 years. And we traditionally work alongside original equipment manufacturing representatives when we install the equipment, but not 900. The industry standard, I can tell you, is much less than 900. We have the knowledge and capacity to do it. And to suggest that we don't, I think, is an insult to the Canadian worker. And we're here to work with the company to make sure they do the right thing.
The Building Trades Union represents more than 500,000 Canadians in construction trades. Strickland is calling for a meeting with Nexstar to find out why the company needs so many foreign workers for installation.
Dawson, has there been discussions between Nexstar and these trade unions?
Strickland says the union's conversation with Nexstar is relatively nil, and they're not alone. The Construction Employers Coordinating Council of Ontario and the Provincial Building and Construction Trades Council of Ontario have issued a joint statement urging for more dialogue.
Where are our provincial and federal governments in this?
Well, Premier Doug Ford today defended Nexstar bringing in these South Korean technicians. He said they're here to set up the plant, do training, and then go back to their home country. 2,500 full-time production positions are still going to Canadians. Ontario's Minister of Economic Development said the techs will help train 700 Ontario workers on the equipment. Meanwhile, Canada's Minister of Innovation defended the deal again today.
You need a technology transfer, because battery manufacturing was not part of the industry we had either in Canada or the United States. So we need a technology transfer. Building the plant is the money of the company. The company is putting $3.4 billion of their money to build that plant. That's private money which is coming in Canada, that's why it's important to state the facts.
Windsor-Tecumseh MP Eric Kuzmerchik posted on social media today that he met and spoke with Nexstar's CEO. Kuzmerchik said the federal Conservatives are playing political games that put this project at risk.
Well, thanks so much for that, Dawson. That's the CBC's Dawson Chen reporting. A plan to house 400 students near Windsor's downtown core is a step closer to reality. St. Clair College has partnered with an Ohio real estate company to build a new residence, and some students say housing like this is greatly needed.
It's very grateful for some few students. They might not get accommodations. It's really hard for them to get in the Jan intake. And many intakes, there are more than lakhs and more students coming. So I think it's great that they are making some efforts for the international students.
It's called Global Village Windsor. St. Clair College signed an agreement with Fairmount Properties to build the residence. It will be built at the corner of University Avenue West and Crawford Avenue, the former Grace Hospital site. Their tuition and rental fees will be combined, like they are for students staying in some of the school's residence. Fairmount was chosen by the City of Windsor as the developer for the site in 2020. Construction was supposed to begin 2 years ago, but the pandemic disrupted those plans, according to Fairmount's CEO. The new residence comes after concerns were raised over poor living conditions for students.
I feel like international students, when they come to Canada, they should expect something more of an actual good living condition, so not sharing a bedroom with multiple roommates.
The Windsor Police Service is receiving nearly $900,000 to fight auto theft. It's part of a provincial program called Preventing Auto Theft, or PAT for short. The CBC's Dale Molnar has more.
Things have gotten a lot busier at Speedy Glass over the past 6 weeks or so. They have seen an exponential increase in the number of cars coming in with smashed windows due to theft.
At full capacity, maybe in a week we would see from vehicle theft or vandalism, maybe 4 or 5 in a week, and we're seeing 4 to 5 or more a day. At peak, we hit about 10 a day. It's not the increase we want to see. We definitely sympathize with the customers and what they're going through.
While break-ins are up, so are the thefts of entire vehicles. Car thefts in Ontario increased 31% in the first half of this year compared to last year. The Windsor Police Service is one of 21 services across the province that will be sharing $18 million in funding from the province over 3 years to combat auto theft. Windsor Police did not respond to a request for an interview, but in a news release, Chief Jason Belair said auto theft is one of the most significant problems facing our community. He also points to a car theft ring busted up earlier this year in which 138 vehicles stolen from Windsor and Toronto were seized. The Honda CR-V topped the top 10 list of most commonly stolen vehicles in 2022. Samer Mansour was the victim of auto theft earlier this month. He was able to help police track down his car with an Apple AirTag, but he says it took police 2 hours to respond to his complaint. So we'd like to see the police use the $900,000 they're getting from the province to improve the way they handle reports of auto theft.
And I feel like, if they have better standards in place, protocols in place, so that they can make sure to follow those, because the response that they had definitely could have been improved in a lot of different ways.
Mansour says his brother is now using an Apple AirTag. Speedy Glass also installs another type of tracker.
So this is the tag tracking system. So we hide a series of transponders in the vehicle. We wrap them in butyl tape, and we don't just put these like in glove compartments where you can find them. They are well hidden, and they use radio frequency. They don't use GPS.
According to a news release, Windsor Police will be getting their $900,000 over 3 years, and it will go toward prevention, detection, analysis, and enforcement. It's not clear what that will specifically entail. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
As the province continues to work on bringing beer and wine to convenience stores, Premier Doug Ford has hinted that the beer store may not close down.
We're working alongside with the beer store. We're in negotiations, and we're going to keep our promise to make sure that we have convenience and selection across the province, like you see across the entire world. But we want to be fair, and we're going to be continuing to negotiate with the beer store, and they'll still play an important role in the whole system.
A 10-year agreement between the province and the beer store is set to expire in 2025. Negotiations are underway, and a decision on whether the province renews the agreement needs to be made by the end of December. Ford made a campaign promise in 2018 to bring beer and wine to convenience stores. Ontario Liberal Party members start voting for their new leader tomorrow. 4 people are in the race. One of them is perceived frontrunner Bonnie Crombie. And as Lorenda Redekop tells us, the Premier had some tough words today for the woman who might be his opponent in the next provincial election.
All 4 Liberal leadership candidates are making their final push online, showing off endorsements and their trips across the province. Bonnie Crombie, Nate Erskine-Smith, Ted Hsu, and Yasser Naqvi are all trying to secure last-minute support. A new leaked internal memo from Crombie's top strategists to leaders of her campaign says we are so close to a victory, and in particular, so close to a victory on the first ballot. It urges them to make sure supporters vote, saying stop tapping on the keyboard and start tapping on doors.
I haven't yet seen compelling evidence that anyone's set to win on the first ballot, but she's certainly the front runner.
This Liberal strategist notes the memo, first obtained by the Toronto Star, isn't the only recent memo.
I've been involved in a couple campaigns over my time, and I've written a couple memos just like that. It is about, we saw the same thing used by Yasser Naqvi's campaign a few days ago. I would assume anything you read in the paper was meant to be in the paper.
Today, Premier Doug Ford was asked whether he'd reverse a fast-tracked zoning change in Mississauga, something Crombie, on leave as mayor, wants to happen. Ford then brought up comments he says Crombie made in a closed-door meeting.
She feels disrespected. I felt disrespected when I sat down and said we need more housing for new Canadians. She said immigrants don't buy homes and don't buy condos. That's disrespectful to new Canadians.
In a statement later, Crombie accused the Premier of being scared of a Liberal Party under her leadership and throwing around desperate, fabricated attacks.
Everybody's got a path. Some people's paths are wider than others, but it depends on how hard each candidate and their team works this weekend. That's what it comes down to.
Meanwhile, the party's interim leader says any of the 4 candidates could win. He says with a ranked ballot, it's not just about first-place votes, but also securing second-place picks.
I think you have to work harder to be number 2. It's easier to get the people who are already with you. What you have to do is convince people, right, to come to you who are supporting another candidate.
The vote is also a point system, giving weight to all parts of the province. When Doug Ford took the PC leadership, challenger Christine Elliott won more votes, but he had the weighted advantage. Liberals vote Saturday and Sunday, with the counting and new leader announced next Saturday. Lorenda Radicott, CBC News, Toronto.
Some Israeli hostages were released today as part of a ceasefire deal. They were among some 240 people abducted by Hamas and taken to Gaza on October 7th. Some Palestinians who were imprisoned in Israel were also released in return today. The CBC's Sasha Petrusik reports.
The convoy of white SUVs wove its way through Gaza tonight, the first peaceful night in 7 weeks of war. Inside, 13 Israeli hostages. Their ordeal ended in a Hamas video, the frightened, confused faces of women in their 80s, one carried by an armed Hamas militant. Children also, including Ohad Munder, who marked his 9th birthday in captivity, bundled into a van alongside his grandmother and mother. Egyptian TV showed them taken to waiting Israeli ambulances, most of the hostages apparently healthy enough to walk. Israelis cheered after waiting all day to see if the deal to bring home these first of 240 hostages would actually happen.
It's just everything. Relieved, nervous, afraid. Not uncertainty. I'm sad. I'm glad. It's everything together.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised today's release was just the start. We are committed to the return of all our hostages, he says. He also vowed to continue the war after this pause ended. Israel's part of the deal was to release Palestinian prisoners from its jails. 39 teens and women today welcomed and cheered in the West Bank. Mara Bakir was set free after spending 8 years in jail since she was 16. News of the deal to release us was a complete shock, she says. We had no idea what was going on in Gaza. As Israeli hostages were taken by helicopter to meet their families, both sides prepared for more releases as early as tomorrow. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
UN officials say 137 trucks delivered aid in Gaza on this first day of the ceasefire, the most in a single day since the war started last month. Egyptian officials hope 200 trucks will be able to cross each day. It also hopes fuel shipments can double, but aid agencies say a longer ceasefire is needed, with an estimated 1.7 million displaced. With the ceasefire now in effect, many of those people have taken to the road to return to their homes. Some were headed to northern Gaza, despite Israeli warnings that the area remains a war zone. Homelessness is a growing challenge in cities across Canada, and for overcrowded shelters, it's a constant struggle to try to help people with nowhere to go during harsh winter days. Advocates say the long-standing problem is still being addressed with only bandage solutions. Jamie Strachan reports.
This is where Toronto's bursting homeless population is supposed to find directions to a shelter bed, a place to sleep for the night. But Rose Massey can tell you it's not that simple.
Naturally, it's getting very chilly, and if they can put 62-year-old woman and sick with 12 different health issues and expect them to stay over there, and they think it's a joke.
Massey has been waiting weeks as the city confronts a basic issue. Too many people, not enough beds.
It's just this confluence of perfect storm conditions.
On top of an already vulnerable population driven onto the streets by addiction and economic hardship, the city has been dealing with a new client.
We also have an increase in the number of refugee claimants coming to the country. So these are people who are escaping any number of different situations globally. And frankly, we want them to come to Canada. We need more people, we need their skills, but we don't have the housing.
Toronto's far from alone. Vancouver's unhoused population has increased by more than 30% since 2020, with almost half living outside. In Edmonton, more than a third of the growing homeless population is without a bed.
This never ends.
This advocate tries to make life on Edmonton streets a little more tolerable.
We know winter is going to come every year, and yet nothing is done till the last minute. And what's done then is nothing but bandages, as opposed to real solutions.
Cities say they can't do it alone and are appealing to other levels of government for help.
We've been asking the federal government to step up and support with the shelter system. So this hasn't been an overnight problem.
On the verge of winter, the search for answers and warmth is urgent. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Walkerville High School grads Katie Kerr and Danielle Wade are starring in a new Christmas musical in Toronto. Kerr and her husband wrote Chris Misses, the name of the production. And you might remember Danielle Wade for winning a CBC reality show called Over the Rainbow. The musical opens at the Winter Garden Theatre on Yonge Street on December 7th. They spoke to Windsor Morning about the inspiration behind the show and their advice to young people getting involved in theatre.
You hear that old familiar sound you can't ignore.
Christmases is a blend of sort of your nostalgic, comforting Hallmark movie with the live spectacle of stage. So think the Santa Claus meets the Sound of Music.
Original Canadian musicals are so important, and they don't happen very often, or as often as we would like as Canadian performers. And Katie and Matt have, always been so wonderful to me, and they're good friends. And the writing and the music is so good and clever and sweet. It's just a beautiful little magical holiday musical. Melody from golden days of yore. He deserves to be. As soon as you can, as soon as you decide you love it, just keep going. Mm-hmm. And if you just keep trying, especially building a musical or a career, you have to just do it. You can't back foot anything in this industry. You got to just go for it.
If you have any festive plans outside tonight, you're going to want to dress warm. The temperature sits at about -2 right now, and it's supposed to drop even further. We have your weekend weather forecast coming up after the break. My favorite time of the week, checking out the weekend weather forecast. The CBC's Victor Paulo is here with all the details.
Meg, happy Friday. Hope you're having yourself a fantastic day today. Now, when it comes to the weather in Windsor, a couple things to note. We are expecting a cold night tonight. Now, why do I say cold? Because our average low is minus 0.6 and our average high is 6.3. So remember those two numbers. We're looking at our 3 and 7 day forecast. Now, we're expecting a beautiful sunny Saturday, but when it comes to your Sunday, we're expecting a bit of precipitation, a mix of rain and snow to come our way. Now, here's what it's going to look like on the radar here. We can see it's going to be quite the start to Saturday. It's going to be quite cold. It's going to be a mix of sun and cloud. And when it gets later on into the day of Saturday, the main theme for Saturday is sun and cloud. It's going to be cloudy, not that much sun as it comes later on in the day. But as we do get closer to Sunday, we can see what's inching our way. All that blue means snow. And as it does start for the day, it's going to be a mix of rain and snow. Now, of course, mattering on how the wind decides to change, a lot of this could be more rain that's going to be coming through Windsor. But if the wind decides to stay the way it is, it could be more of the snow variety. But now, if it's a bit of rain, a bit of snow, another thing that it can be, you do see that pink mixed in there, is it could be a mix of rain and snow. So you want to make sure you're keeping track of that radar, seeing what's going on with the weather if you do have plans to be outdoors, because it should be lasting all the way through, as you do see, to about overnight, midnight Monday. When it comes to Monday, another thing we are expecting, again, a steady stream of scattered flurries throughout that day. So be prepared for your start of your day close to noon for all those flurries to pass by. Now, speaking of cold nights, tonight is going to be minus 7, feeling like minus 11. It is going to be a chilly one. So make sure if you are outside, you're bundled up and you're dressed and prepared for that weather. Now, taking a look at our 3 and 7 day forecast, once we get through that cold night, we're back to seasonal temperatures. A high of 3, low of 0 right there. It's going to be a high of 3 right there. And one thing we can also note when it comes to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's going to be beautiful sunny days ahead. Now, we also see Fridays in store for a bit more precipitation to pass through the region. But one thing we can all enjoy is a beautiful Saturday with a little bit of sunlight. Hope you all have yourselves a beautiful weekend in Windsor. And over to you, Meg.
Thanks so much for that, Victor. That's the CBC's Victor Paulo. If you're a Billy Joel fan, you might need to find a way to get to New York. We have that story coming up after the break. A popular chain that sells specialty toys and children's books is in some financial trouble. Mastermind Toys has obtained an initial order for creditor protection from Ontario courts. Nisha Patel has the details.
On one of the biggest shopping days of the year, this was unexpected news.
We are very disappointed. Mastermind is such a nice store.
I'm surprised because they have some really good quality stuff in there.
It's sad to hear that a business is experiencing some problems.
Mastermind Toys has been granted creditor protection and is planning to close some of its 66 stores. The company says its business was disrupted by the pandemic and sales have been suffering amid stiff competition.
3/4 of consumers today say that when they're looking for any product, Amazon is the first stop. So it's not the shopping mall, it's not a specialty retailer.
According to court documents filed this week, Mastermind has been losing money for years. Now, as consumers cope with the high cost of living, they're cutting spending on items that aren't essential.
When you have that kind of competitive pressure and a potentially weak economy ahead of us with job insecurity and financial insecurity, it makes for a tough environment.
Mastermind put itself up for sale earlier this year, but as potential buyers lost interest, the toy chain struggled to stay afloat. Still, this doesn't mean it's definitely going out of business. Creditor protection allows a company time to work out its financial difficulties. For now, Mastermind says its stores are still open and all sales and promotions will continue. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A new exhibit in New York is celebrating the life and career of singer Billy Joel. Fans can explore more than 5 decades of memorabilia. The Piano Man visited the Long Island Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame before opening day.
It's very overwhelming. This is, I don't know, where did he get all this junk?
The exhibit includes a curved wall showcasing his performances, a huge piano, and other items. It covers his albums, tours, videos, awards, and personal experiences. Some of the items were donated by collectors, while others were donated by the singer himself. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming on CBC Gem and CBC Explore. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here next week.